development.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're live!
You're fine.
Yay!
I'm excited to be here. I hope you guys are excited to be here as well. Welcome to the Force Collective. We've got a really exciting topic to be talking to you guys about this week. So, Shade, if you want to take it from there.
Yes. So, I've got a lot to say tonight. I'm really excited for what we're about to do. Palpatine is one of my favorite characters. He is my favorite villain of all time. So when it comes to talking about certain characters, he is one of them I'm very excited to talk about. So we're going to start off with his character. Now, I like the character of Palpatine is very interesting, and I learned a lot over the last couple days by reading the Plagueis book, and I don't know exactly what to say. I'm blown away by the book.
It had the same effect on me the first time that I read it. I felt very enlightened, and it really felt like Palpatine's character made a whole lot more sense, in a cohesive sense after reading that novel.
All right, so to start off, I'm going to discuss the character of Palpatine. Like, I'm going to talk about his origin and all that stuff. And since I just read the book, I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say about this. But after reading that, I'm super excited. So without any further ado, oh, by the way, hi Bounty Hunter Network. Nice to see you in the chat. Hello, everybody watching. All right, so the character of Palpatine. He was once a young man, believe it or not. A young man in the youth legislation thing that was going on in Naboo. He went. We see him in the book at 17 years old. That's when he first comes into contact with Darth Plagueis. Though at the time he didn't know he was a Sith. He went by the name of Higo Damask. Yeah, Higo Damask. And that first interaction, we learn a lot about Palpatine. We learn that he's got a somewhat, not exactly criminal history, but violent history. And we also learn that he hated his father. Yeah, he hated his father.
Is this turning into a Dark Knight reference? Oh my god!
I hated my father.
You know
want to know how I got these? I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. I'm being stupid. Okay, I'm going to do better.
Not being able to see your face while you do that impression, I could have been convinced.
I hated my father. My father was a drinker. No, I'm done. I'm done making references. All right, I'm losing my words. I had everything planned out. I knew I was going to say, now I've lost it. Dang it. I think I've gotten way too excited. Okay. I'm good now. So, he meets Plagueis at his university at 17 years old when he was doing the youth legislation. That's where we learn that he hated his father, that he loves racing. Yes, Palpatine did race professionally, but he was also a little bit violent. He ended up killing 2 civilians in a race. He didn't seem all too
pod racing.
Yeah, that's pod racing for sure. And he sort of vents out to Plagueis. Plagueis becomes, like, in a way, like a father figure to him, of sorts at the time. So he starts venting to Plagueis a lot whenever they meet. And eventually he gets to the point where he talks about, how his dad, how he really doesn't like his dad. And Plagueis, after recruiting him to spy for him for that election that on Naboo, he sort of coaxed him into killing his father. But he didn't just kill his father. No, he didn't just kill the men, but the women and the children too.
Oh my God, you are on one tonight.
I know it. But I'm not joking about that though. So his father, knowing the relationship between Hugo Mask and Damask and or Darth Plagueis, I'll just make it easier calling him Darth Plagueis. Knowing the relationship between Plagueis and Palpatine, his father sends him off to study somewhere else, and Palpatine doesn't like that. Not one bit. That was an unintentional reference.
We walked into that. That was amazing.
I did. So, he starts to, act a little erratic, gets a little angry at his father, and his father also does the same. His father reveals some pretty messed up details that I honestly, I couldn't imagine being told this myself by my own dad. He said that, or his father said, oh, by the way, hi, Chrono. Chrono, fact check me, please. All right. So, his father tells him that he didn't even believe that he was of his own blood, so he had him tested. So that right there is messed up. And you know what? His father deserved what he got in a way, and I'm not trying to be mean when I say that. I mean, his father was just pretty much evil, in my opinion, even though he wasn't exactly Palpatine evil. He pushed Palpatine into this by being as distant and as just being him and treating Palpatine the way he did. Palpatine, his mother, his father, and his siblings were on this ship as they were traveling to the destination, and Palpatine gets so angry that he feels the dark side rising up in him, and he releases his pent-up anger and darkness on his father, killing his father. But before his father died, he said, if this was the Force, then I curse it. And I can't remember what Palpatine says after that, but that scene right there in the book sends chills down my spine, seeing Palpatine use the dark side for the first time. And you know what? His mother, he kills her. He kills his siblings. He kills the one guard that knew about all this and all that stuff. After that, he goes to meet Plagueis. I'm actually just doing a book review. Let me speed it on up because the rest of this stuff is irrelevant. Let's just say he killed his family because Plagueis coaxed him into it. Eventually, they developed this relationship where Plagueis is going to become co-chancellor as Palpatine becomes chancellor, and they would rule the galaxy together. The whole book sort of details exactly how they orchestrated the Clone Wars, or were going to orchestrate it before Plagueis was killed, which Palpatine fell through with the plan anyway. But this book releases a bunch of details, and some of this might be a little off topic, but I think it's stuff worth mentioning. If you haven't read the book, I listened to the audiobook at work. You need to read it or listen to it, Chrono. It took me 2 days to listen to it. I was really from the beginning of it, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it gives me a bunch of, or it sort of how do I put it? It makes me realize a bunch of things that I wouldn't have noticed before, or that actually makes sense. It answers questions maybe let me use one for example. How does Palpatine kill Padme? It doesn't say that he killed Padme, but a lot of people say that she died from sadness. And I'm not going to reveal anything because you haven't read it. And for those that haven't, I really implore you to read it. It's a really good book. But it sort of explains how that can be done. So I'm not going to go into too many spoilers now that I know that you haven't read it. But basically, the whole book is about Palpatine and Plagueis and their plans to orchestrate the Clone Wars and the fall of the Republic. And so I'll give you that much right there. Okay, so there's many talking points about Palpatine I'd like to go over, like the fact that he had sort of a violent history. He had to move from school to school and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things, and this book isn't technically canon, but as far as I know, there isn't a canon book that tells us about his past. And so I think that in turn makes this canon anyway. At least until they give us something that isn't, that makes it not canon. Which, honestly, I wish they'd just make this book canon. I think I'm getting a little off topic. So the character of Palpatine, where was I? I'm doing a terrible job right now, I think.
No, you're doing a great job.
Okay.
But we were just talking about Palpatine's, his violent past.
Oh, yeah. Well, that stuff started to show through and all that stuff. He finally released it on his father and his family. He basically, after that, he begins to train as a Sith with Plagueis. On up till around, I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff, but the book also covers a lot of what was happening within the Phantom Menace. And one thing I didn't know, and that gives me a whole new perspective on the Phantom Menace, is the fact that Plagueis is alive during the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, that was that kind of blew my mind actually when I learned that. And I would just like to add to something that you said about just sort of realizing things as you were reading this book. This is perhaps my favorite EU book because kind of as you were saying, I felt like I was just putting two and two together and just having all these epiphanies like the whole way through. So if you haven't read the Plagueis novel or listened to the audiobook or something, I definitely implore you to do so.
It seriously is one of the best books I've ever read. So it details how Darth Sidious or Palpatine came into contact with Maul, which I thought was really interesting. I'm not going to say anything about that. Chrono hasn't watched it or read it. Let me think of what else I can talk about. Because I had all this stuff written down and I don't have the notebook with me. So I just realized that, dang it. Oh gosh, I had notes. I was prepared. Okay. So we learn about like how he became a senator and like his mentor, how he, died and all that stuff. But his story is sort of sad. And it really makes me like not relate exactly to him, but feel for him. That's what I'm trying to say. It makes me feel for Palpatine because his family seemed to hate him. I mean, as far as I could tell, it might have just been his father. They didn't really go into much about his mom and his siblings, especially his siblings. His mom got more development than his siblings did, but he had siblings, believe it or not.
Palpatine's sorry, I just wanted to add right quick. Palpatine's his story supports the narrative, in my opinion, that monsters in most scenarios are kind of they're kind of a result of their circumstances. And like you said, he is a murderous psychopath. So it's not, it doesn't exactly make you relate, but it makes you understand. And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah. Honestly, I've got a newfound respect for Palpatine now, especially after this. I mean, I already respected him a lot, but now I like see a lot more, or not see, but I know a lot more about him. So therefore, when I think of things, or not think of things, but think about him specifically in the movies, I start thinking about like, just what I've seen in the movies. But now that I've read this, I'm like, oh man, wait a minute. He used to have a family that hated him. He was part of this big family on Naboo. I think it's like a noble family. Yes, the Palpatine family. House Palpatine, I think is what they called it. See, the thing is, another thing about Palpatine is that he doesn't use his first name. he hates his first name. He'll go by his last name, and that's the only name he'll go by. And that also inspired Dooku to do the same thing. Why Dooku isn't his first name. Dooku is his last name, and he won't go by his first name. So Palpatine, in turn, also inspired Dooku to do the same. This
What
also
is Dooku's first name? I've never thought about this.
I don't know either. It never said anything about it in the book. We just know that he's a count of Serrano, I think is the name of the planet. And it sort of talks about how he left the order and all that stuff. It's pretty interesting. But all in all, he had a hard childhood, probably because he's sort of violent, but also because his father hated him. And, Plagueis became that father figure that he needed. And that's why I think he connected with him so well. And Plagueis, in turn, was very impressed with Palpatine. And as a villain, Plagueis was really good. Like, he was honestly almost as good as Palpatine. And it amazes me that they didn't try to reuse Plagueis in anything.
Which is a topic that I actually want to, perhaps, if we have time, get into at the end of this stream, or maybe as a part 2 for the next stream, is why Snoke secretly being Plagueis, I think would have been so much better of a move, because I feel like it kind of ties a bow around things. And considering that this last sequel really, or this last trilogy really should have been the thing that kind of unites all three, and I really think that Plagueis could have been the key to all of that. Because you think if he could have been the consistent person that could kind of worked it into, he was kind of orchestrating things, perhaps, a background character the entire time, and given us an entirely new perspective on Star Wars as a whole. We're like, oh, this was going on the whole time, and we had no idea. I just think it would have been a really genius move. But I'm sorry, I know that's off topic. I would like to get into
Not
that
entirely.
point.
No, I completely agree. We should have got a little more of Plagueis, and it would have been nice if Snoke was secretly Plagueis. That would sort of be a bittersweet thing, because if that Snoke clone, whatever he was a version of Plagueis, which they would have had to do a total redesign, because that couldn't have been Plagueis. Plagueis was a Mune, which was one of those guys from the banking clan.
Yeah.
And, they have like the super thin but tall heads. Yeah, that would have been really cool. That, or they can do the little Force essence transfer thing, which actually was mentioned in that book. That's one thing I wanted to mention, that the essence transfer thing was mentioned in that book. The problem is, though, the way that was handled in the Rise of Skywalker as opposed to what they talked about in the book, it seems it's different. And we can talk about that later. I just want to say that was actually mentioned beforehand, and it is a Sith thing, but it was a power that was lost. So it shouldn't have been really a thing, at least not that unless Palpatine somehow figured it out. But honestly, I think it was just a dumb idea in the first place.
But, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just about to say that it's just in the book, though. It wasn't in the movie. And I can accept it due to the fact that they just mention it and not actually use it to bring back a character that should have died. But the problem with the essence transfer thing is that it's just an excuse to bring back an old character.
Yeah,
that
I agree.
Is dead. And we'll get to Palpatine's return a little bit later. I'm going to move on to around the Phantom Menace time. Right before the Phantom Menace, there's another election of who's going to rule Naboo, and Palpatine gets Padme elected. basically. Let's see. In the comics, Palpatine had clones to transfer himself into, so it's definitely that is true. That is true. Very true. But he got Padme elected, basically. I'm not going to go into all that. I'm trying not to spoil too much about it. I'm just going over some key points. There are a few little spoilers in here, so if you don't want to hear them, you know. But moving on, it talks about how, like, right as they're going to the platform to meet Anakin, Palpatine and Plagueis have, like, this conversation. Plagueis didn't want to show up at the same time as Palpatine to meet over there because it wouldn't look good, I guess. And so that's why you don't see him in that scene, but he is definitely around at that time. So don't worry about spoilers. Go ahead. If you're sure you don't want, if you're sure you want me to spoil it, I'll do it. So, then Dooku sort of talks to Palpatine later on and tells him about the Chosen One prophecy. He already mentioned it once, but since Anakin was there, Dooku had left the Order already by this time. He was talking to Palpatine, telling him that Qui-Gon believed that boy was the Chosen One, and that is what got Palpatine's eye on Anakin in the first place. Plagueis wanted to see Anakin for himself, so Plagueis actually went to meet Anakin. But Qui-Gon had already made off with Anakin before Plagueis could actually speak to him. So that's why, you don't see anything about that in the movie as well. I think it happened right after that scene where Anakin goes to try to meet Padme. I think that's where it happened because that scene in the Phantom Menace, he's like, he's going to the temple or something like that, but he wanted to say goodbye to Padme just in case that's the last time that they'll see each other. So Plagueis shortly after shows up asking to meet Anakin, to meet the boy, I think that's how he put it. And he didn't, he just missed him. And he started to fear that could be the undoing of their plan, which, of course, eventually I'd say it was, but it also was the thing that sort of kickstarted the plan. And let's see. I'm doing a terrible job tonight, but I'm going to keep going. Oh, gosh. So, as far as that goes, Plagueis was around at that point, and the prophecy of the Chosen One really started to, like, even though I don't think they exactly believed in it at first, it did sort of bother them. They talk a lot about Midi-chlorians, so if you don't like Midi-chlorians, you probably won't like this book because they talk about that a lot. I, of course, don't care. I think it's sort of a cool thing to add to it, which there is. I've already talked about, like, the scientific side to the Force and all that stuff in a previous stream. That's why I think it's pretty cool. If you haven't seen that, go watch. I think it was the first one or second one.
I think it was one. It was one of the first two. We talked about how just the Jedi Council even sort of believing in midichlorians in the first place was kind of a sense, them losing their way. They're sort of becoming more secular and less spiritual.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Palpatine sort of started thinking about, or not just Palpatine, but Palpatine and Plagueis. They seen how the count, and they sort of also, like, put some of this stuff into motion as well. They could see that the council currently sort of seemed to serve the Senate at this point, and they talk about that a little bit in the book, and they sort of exploit that. And which I think is interesting. Like, the whole plan itself was very detailed from the very beginning, and all the pieces just seem to line up. And Palpatine was one that sort of came up with a lot of the plan, in my opinion. he did make a lot of suggestions, and I think near the end of the book, he says that to Plagueis as he's killing him. Yes, this book does end with Plagueis dying. If you didn't know,
If
I
you
don't.
if you've watched Revenge of the Sith, this should not be a spoiler to you.
So, at the time of Episode 1, Palpatine is just becoming the Chancellor, but there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes where he was trying to get Valorum like a bad reputation, I guess. Mm-hmm. Sort of messed with him, like sort of trying to bring him down. That's what I'm trying to say. He's trying to bring down Valorum behind the scenes, but at the same time pretending to be his friend. So he had a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes, making him look bad. And then he was orchestrating these situations that would eventually end up in Valorum's vote of no confidence, in the Chancellor. Also, I didn't realize what the treaty exactly was for in Episode 1. I thought it was just a treaty for them to make their occupation legal, but it's not just that. See, Naboo is full of, like, they have, like, this thing with plasma. They can exploit it and all that stuff, like they can sell it, all that. So the Trade Federation also wanted, like, I guess in a way, rights to the plasma. So that it was also like that whole invasion was not just politically motivated, but also financially. And I didn't even realize that before. And it's very interesting because I didn't mention it in the movie, but that book really cleared that up. So at this point, we find out that Palpatine basically sent Maul, and specifically to kill Qui-Gon, because he sort of foreseen that if Qui-Gon lived, then his plan wouldn't work. He said Qui-Gon was the key. And that's a very interesting thing, because we sort of talked about that. What if Qui-Gon didn't die? And now we have an idea, like a almost canon idea. I mean, it's canon until they do something with it, I guess. But it would have really messed up his plans if Qui-Gon had lived. So Qui-Gon was one that Plagueis himself sort of feared and knew that he would be trouble. And I can see why. I mean, by his beliefs, we can already tell that even the Jedi Council had a little bit of trouble with Qui-Gon, but it's not because Qui-Gon was a difficult guy. It's because, in my opinion, the Council was sort of wrong. But on from the Council, so we move on to where he becomes Chancellor, and he man, I'm losing everything. I just listened to this. So he becomes Chancellor, and it doesn't really talk about like anything from Episode 2. So after we get from Episode 1, everything that happens is in the movie. So he becomes Chancellor. He works both sides of the war. He in the book has Count Dooku to be against him but work with him. So I mean, he sort of talks about that. I mean, of course, we already see that in the Clone Wars, where since he is a separatist, he does work for Sidious, but Sidious is also the Chancellor. So he's working both sides, but he needed somebody to sort of help control the other side, which was Count Dooku. And, he just had this big masterful plan. And it's very interesting to see that. So in Episode 2 is just all about, him like being able to create that clone army that him and Plagueis had talked about. And Sifo Dyas was the one that purchased the clone army. Well, not technically purchased it, because it was Plagueis, I think, that paid for it. But he had it done because Plagueis sort of manipulated Sifo Dyas to do so. And at one time, I thought that Count Dooku had played the part of Sifo-Dyas, but from the book, it implies that Sifo-Dyas himself did it. So that's another little interesting tidbit. And that's why in episode 2, and I didn't understand this, if not Qui-Gon, but if Count Dooku had played a part in making the clone army, then why would he have asked, how can the Jedi have come up with an army so quickly? So that right there confirms it, that Count Dooku had nothing to do with the creation of it. It was Sifo-Dyas and Plagueis. So Palpatine gets the army that he was looking for, that to fight alongside the Jedi, sort of, I guess, trying to gain their trust with that army to let them, like, let their guard down against the ones that they fight for, then ends up turning them against the Jedi. And also, like, I don't think one little thing I wanted to say, I feel like I'm all over the place, but this is one little thing I wanted to say. So, I don't think the Jedi exactly knew of Darth Plagueis. And the thing about that is, I mean, he never exactly revealed himself to the Jedi. So when Palpatine tells Anakin, have you ever heard of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? And said, thought not is not a story the Jedi would tell you, it's a Sith legend. It literally just happened in episode 1. Like, the death of Plagueis happened in episode 1, but I don't think they knew that Plagueis was around, which was very interesting. That also gives me a little bit of a perspective on that. So that's sort of just something that he knows about, which is crazy. And the way that he killed him, though, it was really awesome. Like, the way they described the whole thing, it was written really well, is what I'm trying to say. And it, in a way, was sort of sad and sudden, but at the same time, it's something that a Sith would have done. Just turning right off the bat, like, no, some Sith don't need a reason to turn; they'll just do it because they're greedy or something like that. But Plagueis never gave him a reason to turn exactly. He just turned against him, and which was very interesting. And apparently, he taught him how to manipulate Midi-chlorians. So this is where I was going with that thing about Padme I mentioned earlier. So he must have taught him how to manipulate the Midi-chlorians in someone, because he manipulated Plagueis' Midi-chlorians to kill him slowly, I'm guessing. No. That was Plagueis doing it to somebody else. No, what he did, he said that he could save him. He can use the Midi-chlorians to save him, but he won't. And that is what I meant by him being able to kill Padme from afar. Why does she die from sadness? She doesn't die from sadness. She dies because Palpatine uses the Midi-chlorians to kill her. That right there in my mind confirms it, and that really made it, like, very interesting for me, because now I have, like, this sense of confirmation, and I'm thinking, what else has Palpatine done? Because the movies implied a lot of things, but they never really told us. And then, like, the books just confirm these theories that we have. And that's the beauty of the prequels, that they just give us things to sort of theorize from. And it just amazes me. Do you have anything to say about his character so far? Are you having trouble with your mic? I think, oh, hold on. I guess so. Okay. Well, so we go on. He's not mentioned in episode 4, so we don't know exactly what he's up to, but we do know that he dissolves the Senate because their battle station will create fear to keep all of the planets in line. It would make a lot of sense for him to kill Padme because her death was instrumental in controlling Vader. Exactly. So that's why I believe that. And let's see. Episode 5, they don't really give us much on him either. But episode 6, that's where he supposedly has these mirrors and stuff like that he uses to transfer his essence. I'm going to talk about the canon part of it, even though I don't want to because I don't like how he returned, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So after, he lets the rebels find the new battle station and a way to destroy it or whatever, it basically luring them into a trap. After he does that, because of his overconfidence, he he dies because he let him he became overconfident and he thought that he could win. And with the new Disney canon, every time that he said strike me down, that was just him wanting to transfer his essence into Luke. I don't like that personally. I think he was just using Luke to get his anger out of him because he knew Vader would protect him. That's why he kept saying strike me down. That's exactly what I'm thinking. But so we go on from that to apparently the whole sequel trilogy is just him on Exegol with a dying clone doing the Force essence transfer thing with a cult called the Sith Eternal. And I mean, that's a cool name, and the concept of it is pretty cool, but I honestly do not like that. I'm not exactly a fan of it. And there's a few reasons why. Like, it sort of messes with the canon, because if we go back to the prequels where they talk about Anakin being the chosen one, he was supposed to bring balance to the Force, and he did. He did in episode 6 when he killed the Emperor. The problem is they bring him back for the new trilogy, and the new trilogy takes place only 30 years after the original, which is stupid to bring the Force out of balance.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
Yes. What is up, people? I'm back.
Yes, he was silent for a moment. So, when they brought him back like that, which I think we're sort of heading into the third topic when I talk about that. How about I save that for last? So I want to talk about how he was developed, how they developed him in the movies. So I'm going to let Psycho take care of that part. Go ahead, Psycho.
Okay, so Palpatine's development. I think you've covered his basically, his development up until the Phantom Menace. So let's kind of take it from there. So when we first see Palpatine in the Phantom Menace, we really don't know too much about him. And most of the time that we see him portrayed is either one of two different ways, and that's just him kind of being the negotiator type figure, the politician,
Very
and then
charismatic.
yeah, and then we see him kind of put on his welcoming face to Anakin. As they say, he kind of took up to him very quickly, and as we all know, there was an end game. There was a reason for that. But I think that it's really obvious, looking back, that he was being very fake, um, and that he was obviously just kind of using people as pawns, so that he could execute. Did you hear me say execute?
Yes.
Like a Pokemon. um, but he was basically using people as like pawns in this elaborate scheme that he had, which is really just, I think, completely genius. Um, so he's at this point playing, both sides of the war, like you said earlier, um, and as things progress and move forward, um, so obviously Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul, and he is yet again down an apprentice. And as we
Well,
all
he didn't
know,
kill him though.
because of what's it called? The rule of two?
Yes.
Because of the
The
rule of
rule.
two, there always has to be two. Um so then
He felt Count Dooku would be a worthy
I was about
placeholder
to
for
say I'm
Anakin.
not really I'm not really sure in how he went about manipulating Dooku. Are you
He didn't
familiar with that
exactly
topic?
manipulate Dooku. He see the thing is, and it talks about in the book that Dooku had already sort of gotten annoyed with the council. He didn't believe in the prophecy of the chosen one like the council did. And not only that, but he believed that Qui-Gon was a rogue Jedi, not or become somewhat of a rogue Jedi. So he had a lot of his own ideas about the stuff that was going on. He didn't like how his other apprentice and a few other Jedi were sent to take care of this dispute, where since a military could have done that, but since the Senate, or I guess the galaxy, didn't want a military at the time, and they thought, oh no, the Jedi will do it. They're our military, and the Jedi are like, yeah, we'll do it. We're peacekeepers, but we'll do it. Count Dooku didn't like that, not one bit.
More Dark Knight references.
I made that reference once, but I just love it.
And I think it also is worth mentioning how easily Qui-Gon could have probably been in Count Dooku's steps, because he was also very skeptical, and I could almost see Palpatine targeting him if he would have survived, to maybe be a potential a potential apprentice, just because he seemed to always have that healthy and rightful skepticism of the council's decisions that could have potentially served as a catalyst, for how he could have maybe started to change his perspective on whether or not the Jedi were really, doing things the right way, which we all know that they pretty much weren't at that point in time.
Yeah, that's true, and I mean, he seemed to fear Qui-Gon. So, in my opinion, I don't know how Qui-Gon would have turned. I don't think Qui-Gon would have turned.
I don't think he would either,
but he would have probably tried to consider him. Maybe he could have tried because yeah, in a way, I can see that now because he didn't hold with the ideas of the council, and maybe Palpatine could have tried to exploit that, but he didn't, or he couldn't because he didn't survive. But if he had, maybe he would have. Instead of choosing Dooku, Qui-Gon would have been probably the next best choice because he was also trained by Dooku, and Dooku being the great Jedi he was, but he might have probably tried, which I think would have been interesting.
I think that is a really interesting idea, that perhaps if he would have survived, that Qui-Gon may have been tempted by Palpatine, and that maybe he would have been wiser than, of course he would have been wiser than Anakin. I mean, if we're being honest, Anakin wasn't really necessarily known for his wisdom. He was kind of known for his angst.
Yeah.
And that ended up being his downfall. I mean, he was kind of naive, and he ended up being, I mean, he fell right into, exactly where he was supposed to in the plan.
Yeah. That plan.
I cannot believe I just witnessed that. Was that? How did you?
Don't worry about it. Yes, I had it ready. I knew that I knew you would go in that direction a little bit, so I've got a few clips set just for those certain directions.
What was that kid's name?
I don't know. That's something I need to find out.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Do it. No, wait. Before I say that,
Do it.
there you go.
Do it.
All right, I'm going to read a couple comments here. I don't feel like this is going as well as I wanted it to, but I was super prepared, and then I left everything out somewhere, and I don't know where it is. So I feel like I'm actually unprepared now. Man, I felt so prepared today. Let's see. He feared Master Qui-Gon because he is always working to enforce the will of the Force, which is why he disagrees with the Jedi so much. That is true. He talked more about the living Force than dealing with the politics that the Council decided to dabble in, and which I think was a bad idea for the Council because they're supposed to be this religious group that defend the galaxy from darkness, and then they become ensnared with the politics of the Republic instead of being these peacekeepers that they're supposed to be, and end up becoming war generals, which I think was also a bad idea. But the Jedi, being the political ones they are, or at least this group of Jedi, get involved in the war anyway, which was ultimately their downfall. And we sort of talked about that in the stream, talking about how they possibly could have fought back against all the clones if they had all not went to war. Because first of all, they wouldn't have these relationships with the clones that they did after fighting. I mean, some Jedi probably didn't care about the clones at all, like Krell, but there's probably some like Anakin or Obi-Wan that cared about their clones and hated, or Ahsoka. She really didn't want to kill any of them, and that right there makes it difficult to fight back against somebody that you don't want to fight, and that's just sort of sad. So Palpatine sort of orchestrated this whole thing quite well, creating an army and for them to fight beside, to learn to love, or care about. Not exactly love, even though I guess they're encouraged to love. But
oh my god.
Shut up.
I just want to say right quick, can I get all F's in the chat? Because my boy Sheev died not only once, but twice. And
Yeah.
first of all, the first time that he died, he got thrown down by a half robot, half old man that was having breathing problems, then exploded a purple explosion, and which was pretty dope actually. I say that's a pretty good way to go out.
Going out with a purple bang.
A purple bang. The
Yeah.
purple bangs are the most delicious ones. And listen, this is not sponsored by Bang Energy, but listen, we'll take it. We will take it. But I mean, his death later on. I mean, part of me thinks it's kind of funny because I just feel like how traumatic the death had to have his death by Rey had to have been for him, because I just imagine him having like PTSD of his duel with Mace as she's deflecting the lightning back. He's like, not again. Are you kidding me?
Hey, that brings me to a point. The book also mentions that Sith Force Lightning, specifically Sith Force Lightning, because they do mention that the Jedi can do it, but not like the Sith can. And it's sort of proven by Plo Koon, who can do Force Judgment, which is his version of Sith Force Lightning. It's not as powerful, but Sith Force Lightning can actually transform something, which is probably why his face deformed when he got shot by his own Force Lightning.
Isn't there? I've read somewhere. I don't know if this is a theory or if this is confirmed, that he was corrupted by the dark side, which is why he was so ugly that he was, and he always looked that ugly. But the illusion broke when Mace hit him with when Mace deflected his lightning back at him. I don't know if that's true or not, but so,
I don't.
that is a really, really cool
I mean,
concept.
it's a cool idea, but honestly, I don't think that's true at all. I mean,
It doesn't really sound possible, but I
no,
mean,
I don't think it is. If we take the book that I just read to heart, then no, it's not possible. Let me put it that way. But I mean, at least I don't believe so. He's shown as a young man going to a university, and his father never mentioned him looking like a wrinkly old man at birth. So I would assume that he looked like a normal child for his entirety of his life, all the way up till he became an adult. Then he looked like a normal adult. I think that the explanation about the Force lightning in the book uh, tells us why he transformed that way when he got blasted with his own Force lightning. So that's what I think.
yeah.
So,
I think that's the more believable explanation for sure.
well, as far as development goes, they really like give us a lot of hints as to what Palpatine can do. They don't really like tell us directly, but they really develop his character a lot in these movies. These 3 movies in particular, the prequel trilogy, which they don't do too much with him in the first movie, but the second one and the third one is where I think they do the most, and especially the third one, of course. The third movie, I'd rather talk about it when it comes to the development because there's a lot more about it, but they really show how he manipulates Anakin. They show his tactics on how he does it. They also give us a lot of ideas on how he does that stuff or how he knows these things. Like, how does he know about Anakin's relationship with Padme? Maybe the same way Obi-Wan knows, because I believe Obi-Wan knows. And that's a conversation for another time. But they sort of give you a hint at that in season 7 of the Clone Wars. And but Palpatine, he has these supernatural powers to be able to probably read minds as well as communicate to you through the Force. And an example of that is the scene where Anakin was told basically to stay at the temple, wait in the chamber or whatever. And that scene where that music is playing, that weird like yeah that music. You know what I'm talking about. But that scene where that music is playing, Anakin hears Palpatine's voice. At least, yeah, he hears Palpatine's voice, and you'd think that maybe it's just repeating a line that he heard from Palpatine. Maybe it's just him thinking about something that Palpatine told him, but it's a completely different line than anything we've heard. And it's just very interesting to think about because he's possibly communicating to Anakin at that very moment because he knows what Anakin did. Anakin already told him that he was going to report him to the council. So Palpatine probably knows that the council is coming for him, and he wants Anakin to see it. So that leads us to the point where he fights those Jedi, including Mace Windu. Do you think Palpatine could have taken Mace Windu a lot easier than he actually did, or did he just actually have a hard time with Mace Windu? Because I think that Palpatine sort of made himself look like he had struggled to fight Mace Windu, but honestly, he probably could have taken Mace Windu out along with the other Jedi.
It's hard to say. I really okay. So part of me thinks, like Palpatine is ridiculously powerful, like way more so than really we even get to see in the films. Like we know this, but and so part of me thinks that he could just blow through him the way that he blew through all the other Jedi, and that he was simply using Mace the way that he used everyone else. And to be honest, that's kind of even more genius. Um, but part of me thinks like, let's not undersell how powerful Mace Windu is. Like he's like said to be just as powerful as Yoda. So like, would it not would he not be thought to give him a good fight? But I mean, honestly, with all those Jedi from the temple that are on the council, that are these great warriors, they should have been able to give more of a fight than what they did, ideally. So I think that I kind of went back and forth with it, but I think that that Palpatine was probably just using Mace to serve as the catalyst for what throws Anakin over the edge.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that he was just toying with Mace the entire time until Anakin came around. And that's when he decides, all right, this time I'm going to make it look like I'm being assassinated. And, well, even though apparently Anakin didn't see like the other Jedi on the floor dead as he walked in, he just well, no, would he have seen them? Now that I think about that, isn't that sort of like a separate room? It's not even the main room. That's like that little small office.
Okay, so which leads to a whole nother question. Did he think about it? I don't know if it is a separate room, but let's say that it is. And if it is, like a separate room in that chamber.
Yeah.
Would he have planned even that out? Like, oh, I've got to take care of these guys now, because if I let them, they're gonna follow me out into this room, and that's where Anakin is. He's gonna walk through here. Like, I don't know necessarily how deep this thing might have went. It's fun to think about.
That room is a gray room. It's a part of the main office room that he's in. So I'm thinking that little room that he was in when they first originally started fighting was a separate room, which is why Anakin doesn't see the Jedi that he killed. And that would make a lot more sense.
This is blowing my mind.
So after the fight with Mace Windu, he gets shocked with Force lightning and all that stuff. But that scene right there, that scene was, well, actually, let me backpedal. Anakin walks in, and all he sees is Mace Windu, and Mace Windu's holding his lightsaber out to Palpatine, and Palpatine looks defenseless for the moment, so it looks bad. It really does look bad, and I think Palpatine played it out that way, exactly how he wanted it. But and Anakin knows that he's a Sith Lord. So does Mace Windu. I mean, everybody there at the time knows about each other. So it's not like Palpatine couldn't have taken care of himself. But he made it look like he had been like taken by surprise, I guess. Or that Mace Windu was forcefully trying to assassinate him. Well, I couldn't imagine any other way to assassinate somebody except forcefully. That probably didn't. But, so I think that was all part of the plan.
But do you think that Anakin? Because okay, so when Anakin gets off, when he decides he's going to go to the temple, and he gets in his ship. Do you think that at this point he's already decided what he's going to do? Like when he makes the decision to go back to the temple, he's already kind of, in a way, in his mind, kind of pledged his allegiance? Or do you think that he was really like, I'm just going to go see what's up? Because I think that I sort of think that really we see him struggle the entire movie, and that moment when he goes back, he's like, all right, I have made my decision. I've decided this is what I'm doing. I'm going back. I'm going to be with him.
Well, I think he has. I mean, that scene that I was telling you about where he talks to Anakin through the Force, that's him telling him that he's the only one that can save her from dying. If I think I don't exactly remember how the quote went, but it's like, if you lose me, you lose any chance of saving your wife. And that's not exactly how he said it, but that's basically what he was saying. So that's when Anakin decides to leave and go there. And that's why Anakin didn't want Mace Windu to kill him. And that's why he said, I need him. So I think Anakin sort of. I don't think he planned on exactly going to the dark side, but the fact that Mace Windu was going to kill him, and Anakin's fear of losing Palpatine and losing the chance to save Padme from dying, that is what pushed him. So I don't think he decided to be a dark side user at first, but I think that he had intentions on learning that power either way. And he didn't want Palpatine to die, so he went there to stop his death.
And it's kind of like, you know, and I guess take this as you will, but it's kind of like, this is kind of the reason that the Jedi had the no attachments rule, because people know that you're in a position of power and people want to manipulate you, people want to use you for things, and if you have these attachments, they're going to use them to manipulate you. And I mean, you could look at it from one side and say, well, in a sense, the Jedi's um like the council's idea of no attachments really serves as the catalyst for the issues for all of this, considering if Anakin could have just had an open relationship with Padme and not had to keep it a secret, he could have went to someone like, I don't know, Yoda or Obi-Wan when he starts having these premonitions, which, I mean, there's another whole can of worms here. All these premonitions could be something that
Palpatine.
Palpatine has created.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That's what I think too. But let's just say that you don't buy that. You don't buy that theory at all. Okay, that's fine, whatever. But even if you don't buy that theory and Anakin still has those same premonitions that send him on his freak out where he ends up deciding eventually to go Sith, well, if he has an open relationship with Padme that he feels like he can openly ask his peers for advice and they can counsel him, I mean, he might not have he likely would have not went down the road that he went down. So you could say, yes, the no attachments thing actually led to their downfall. Or you could say, well, this is kind of why they did that, you know? So I don't really know. Take that as you will.
Marshall Durham is telling us the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. I'm very interested. I read the book already, but I like your take too. It may be an exact wording from the movie, but I really like that scene. It's a really good scene. Darth Plagueis is a Dark Lord of the Sith. He was so powerful and so wise that he can influence the Midi-chlorians to create life.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. And which kind of leads me to a thought that I've kind of been having since the stream is, since the I don't know what the word would be. It'd probably be a made-up word anyway. Since the decanonization of the Plagueis book, I feel like the only Plagueis reference to him that we have is just that little anecdote.
That's sad too.
Isn't that ridiculous?
That is very ridiculous.
He has the ability to save people from dying. He's one of the most interesting Sith Lords that there's ever been, and he was the master to the man who the whole story is about. If you think about it, I mean, he's kind of the opposite of the hero. Like, he's the, I mean, yes, of course, he's the villain, but you get what I mean. The hero is every bit as much about him as it is about Anakin, in a way.
Yeah,
because he's behind it all. So I don't know.
It also, like, the book itself stresses the importance of the political side of taking over the galaxy, as well as the brute force side. And see, that's the thing that the sequels don't do, is show the political side. And you know what? I'd say a lot of people would argue that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I can only tell you what I think. I think showing the political side of the whole thing is also a good thing. And that goes back to something that Commander Tano said, is that it's apolitically political. And those politics is That's something that it's not the same as adding today's politics into it. So that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I'll kind of try to explain it. So, like, for example, we could have a Star Wars movie where there's like a space Trump and a space Biden, and they're in like there's some sort of version of that in these movies, and that would be and that's very silly, but it's a that would be having today's politics in it.
Yeah.
But when I think about, and this is why I think it's so brilliant, when I think about the prequel trilogy and the way that it
Thank you,
implemented
Marshall.
politics,
You're
um,
awesome.
you are
Sorry, go
awesome.
ahead.
When I think about the prequel trilogy and the way that they implemented politics, I think, well, even though this is its own story, it doesn't directly reference anything that's going on in real life. Not directly. You know, there are dictators that you could say are like Palpatine, but it's not a direct reference. There are all these there are all these concepts though that are real: political corruption, manipulation from people in places of power. These are all things that happen in our political systems that are legitimate issues that I feel like in a way it does kind of bring attention to, because like I don't know, I've heard a lot of people say, like, when somebody's running for president they don't like, they're like, oh, that guy's like Palpatine. And I just exactly like, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what
it
you're saying.
it makes it kind of does bring attention to people thinking like, oh, this person's like a Palpatine. This is like a somebody who's using political leverage to do what they want to do or to get power or something like that. And I think that's such a genius way to bring something that's happening in real life, something that's a real issue, into this world and make it a part of it and make it its own and give it its own identity, and not take anything from what's going on here, and to not ruin people's uh, sense of escape,
Yeah.
per se.
See, the thing about it is, when I talk about politics, I'm talking about the politics of the galaxy we're looking at, not our galaxy that we live in. So when it comes to seeing the political stuff, as Croto says, the political aspect of Star Wars is not only interesting but also important, because without it, a lot of stuff would have nothing to stand on. Whatever the world, there will always be a government of sorts. So you gotta,
Brilliantly said.
yes. So you gotta realize that just because the original trilogy doesn't really show much of the political side, uh, that doesn't mean that the politics isn't important to Star Wars. So when you argue that that when they added like all the Senate stuff into the new movies, it made it boring, I don't think so. I think it made it more interesting, showing his political rise to power, which also gave to his you know, becoming emperor. I think it's interesting.
I also would
And
like to I'd like to kind of touch on that right quick. That people say, I hear this argument all the time when people argue about politics versus no politics in Star Wars. People say, well, why do you need to show us this whole political thing? I don't care about politics. You know, why do you have to show us this whole political side of this just to progress the story along? I mean, the original trilogy did not need to show us their whole political thing that's going on, in order to get to tell us the story. And while that is true, if you listen to interviews about from George Lucas talking about his idea for what the original trilogy was supposed to show, it's showing you a very small corner of the galaxy. It's showing you a very, very, very small, very minuscule aspect of something very, very big. And you will hear them reference bigger things. But like Luke says, I don't remember exactly what he says, is if there's a bright center to the universe, you're the planet farthest from.
yeah,
Well, you're seeing you're seeing these desolate landscapes, because I mean, you got to think these films are being made at a time where George was pretty upfront and realistic about the fact that technology is not far enough along yet that I can really show what I want to show. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna table all my ideas, and we'll do something with it in the future. But I have this story that I can show and just show these little corners of the galaxy and still effectively tell the story that I need to. So yes, yes, they were great movies. They're my favorite movies of all time, without a doubt. And they don't need politics in them necessarily to be great. But at the same time, you have to think that in George's mind, what we're being shown is a very small percentage, a very small portion of what's actually going on. So when we do get to the prequel trilogy, the idea is bigger. We want to see what's going on the larger scale. We want to see, these Jedi in their prime, and they're at their, the guardians of the galaxy, to say, not the guardians of the galaxy, but you know what I mean. So, yeah, I don't know what you take from that. My rankings.
Well, me and Chrono had the same thought, so I'm going to go ahead and say what I gotta say first, and I'll read his comment. Okay. But by the time the Empire had let me rephrase that. By the time we see the original trilogy, Palpatine has already taken over. Why do we need to see a political side at this point? We don't. We already, at that time when the movies came out originally, we didn't see that. But if you're watching it now, we know the political side now. We don't need to see any more of it because we already know how he rose to power. Now we just need to see if he can keep the power that he has attained. So that is also why I think that it's good that we only see the politics in the first movie or in the first three movies instead of the next three, because there's no need to show the politics in the original trilogy because he's already risen to power at this point. The original trilogy can't show politics because the galaxy was ruled by the Empire at the time, so it was only the Empire and the rebels. There was no political issues to portray because it was one-sided. Exactly. I had the same exact thought. And you stole that from me. How dare you? No, I say that every time. No, you're good. But that's really something to think about. Because I think it's necessary for the prequels to show the political side. And some would disagree, some would agree. And it don't matter to me whether you disagree or agree. My opinion is that I think it is necessary. And it, in my opinion, made it to be a really good story. So, I mean, take what you will from that. But we're going to move on to the next thing. I feel like we haven't really stayed with the topics too well, but this one I will stay with. Palpatine's return. So, that right there, I feel like could have been done differently, but it happened. So we can talk about it a little bit.
Somehow, Palpatine returned.
Yeah, so he returns as basically a clone. His essence had been transferred into a clone, which that's sort of stupid because wouldn't his clone have its own consciousness? So that means that he's possessing another body that has its own consciousness, which is weird. But I think it could have been done much better than that. And those little mirror things that they keep talking about, I don't know what those things are. They don't really talk about it that much. If it's in the Rise of Skywalker book, I don't know. I haven't read it. I don't care to read it at all. I sound like I really hate the sequel trilogy, which I sort of do. I don't really count it as canon anymore. I would have counted it as canon if they had made some better decisions, but they didn't. And in a later stream, I do want to talk about what my idea of a sequel trilogy would have been if they were to remake the sequel trilogy, or if not, I'm just going to put out what I think they should have done anyway. But in my opinion, when it comes to the return of Palpatine, he shouldn't have returned at all. Or if they were going to make him return, he shouldn't have been like actually returned. They should have been working on a way to bring him back. And then right as they were about to bring him back, like maybe his essence was being brought into a clone and the clone decided to and then finally when his essence is transferred into the clone, they somehow stop it before it's complete and he loses it. I don't know. There's ways that you could have done this to make it better, because I think it messes with the lore. And by that, I mean, like I said earlier on in the stream, it was only 30 years after the last movie. So balance had only been achieved for 30 years. What is the point of having a chosen one prophecy if somebody else is going to bring back balance in 30 years after the actual prophecy is fulfilled? That's sort of stupid. So the only logical explanation is that Rey is the chosen one, because apparently she's the one that brought balance to the Force. And I think that's sort of stupid, because Anakin is the chosen one. And for her to adopt the name Skywalker despite being a Palpatine is also, in my opinion, stupid. But you can have your opinions on that if you want. If you want to call her Rey Skywalker, do it. I don't care. But the thing about that is, though, she's not a Skywalker. She's a Palpatine. And yes, she can pull a Palpatine and go by a different name, but Chrono. Of course she did. She can do everything. Apparently so. She can steal names as well as force powers by touching somebody's hand. That's another thing I can touch on later. That's a funny little one. I you know what? I'll mention it anyway. I think it's sort of funny. So, apparently that scene in The Last Jedi when their minds were bridged and they were sitting inside that little dome-shaped house thing, and they touched their hands. Apparently Rey was able to learn some new force powers from that or something. I can't remember everything. I read up on that a while back, which I think that is sort of stupid. Apparently she can learn everything just by touching things. That's a little bit crazy. There's a lot about her force powers that I do not care about at all. I feel like they're a little bit overpowered and made to fill in holes that should be filled in by story instead of just by coincidence, or something like that. I'm not going too far into that. This is about Palpatine's return. So he returns as a clone, and there's no explanation for it exactly, except that the dark side is a pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural, which, don't get me wrong, that scene actually gave me chills because hearing him say that again was really good. But the thing about that is that's not really an explanation. So they sort of just give you ideas that he's a clone. They don't really mention it in the movie. They don't tell you nothing in the movie. The movie, you just watch it and you see what you see. You don't really get anything out of it. So the book itself reveals that he's some sort of clone, which I initially thought that was his dead body, which I don't see how it could have been his dead body, but that's what I was thinking it was at the time. And I'm like, how can this be? The entire movie, I was thinking, how can this be? And I wanted to like the movie. I really did, but ultimately I couldn't enjoy it because there's too many coincidences that make the story move forward instead of adding some sort of complexity to it. No, it's just all like, oh, here, coincidence. Oh, that's how this happened, or that's where these people went, or how they died, or whoever. Or no, this is how we get to the Death Star and find the other MacGuffin device thing that takes us to Exegol, which gets destroyed. So the whole adventure getting there was pointless. I've got a lot to say about that movie. I'm not going to do that here. But he returns and wants Rey to kill him so his essence can transfer into her. So it's basically, I think it's like Ra's al Ghul from the DC comics. I think he's able to transfer himself into other people's bodies, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know for sure, Psycho? I don't remember. I can't remember at all.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
I said, it isn't the way that Palpatine transfers his essence to another person's body sort of the same as Ra's al Ghul from Batman? Or do you know?
I do
I
not
thought
know.
for sure he could do that. I used to be big in DC. I'm not so much anymore, so I can't remember all this stuff.
Did you? I know this is off topic. Did you watch the Snyder Cut though?
I haven't yet. I've been meaning to, but I haven't yet.
I think you'll enjoy it. Maybe on a random Tuesday stream, we could talk about that. I know it's not Star Wars related, but it would be very fun.
Hey, look, I'm going to do a random stream just for random stuff.
Just ever so often. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm going to mention it now. I was going to mention it at the end, but I'm just going to mention it now for those that are watching. We are moving this Tuesday stream to Monday at 6. So for all you watching, we're moving it to Monday because leaving one day in between each stream sort of isn't exactly as easy as I thought it'd be. And I'm doing a lot of like experimenting with these streams. So, it's just all experiments and stuff like that at the moment. Once I get like a good format down, things will run a lot smoother. I don't know. This has been a tiring week for me. So maybe
that being said, though, even though we're moving the Tuesday stream to Mondays from here on out, we are still going to be doing the usual Thursday stream.
Yes, the Thursday stream stays on Thursday. We're not moving it at least right now. I don't think we'll ever move it, but Snyder Cut discussion sounds interesting. Okay, well, I guess that solidifies it. Maybe after Monday stream. Yeah. See, so far I think on Monday we're going to do one more character analysis stream on Monday, and so far because I put a poll on Twitter, it ain't got that many votes.
I'm gonna go vote on it right now.
But so far it's Qui-Gon. He's winning.
I feel like we did Ahsoka last. I feel like I want to do. Well, never mind. I was gonna say I feel like I want to do a bad guy, and I was like, wait, we're doing the baddest of them all today. If let's say if I was gonna make a metaphor, but it's too much of a stretch. So proceed. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, as far as the return goes, I'm not a fan of it. As I've already said, I want you to say something about it, Psycho, because I've already sort of given my thoughts on it, and maybe you can enlighten me on some things that I might have missed.
3 words. Somehow, Palpatine returned. That's my 3-word answer, but but going from there, yeah, so as anybody was, and everybody was, the first time that I saw the trailer where it had Palpatine's laugh at the end, I was like, no way, what, they can't do that, that's illegal. Like, I was freaking out. And Master Qui-Gon will be fine. I love it. Master Qui-Gon will be fine. No, he won't.
No, it's like this. No, he won't. What do you think of some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that?
You know, I don't think I realized how good you were at these impressions until we started doing this.
Well, oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I sort of. It's not exactly. Well, it might be a little bit of a talent. I bet I can improve my talent of impressions if I tried.
But anyway, back to Palpatine's return. I feel like it was underdeveloped because, first of all, it wasn't supposed to happen.
They just do it.
Yeah, it's a. Oh my god.
That's all they. That's when they mention it. That's all they said. Do it. That's all they said.
I can't believe this.
Palpatine shows up.
Hello there.
And then the fans are like,
No!
And then they're like this.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
You know what's funny? Without sound, it's literally like watching a snuff film. I'm like, this kid's gonna die in like 0.2 seconds.
I'm having too much fun with that.
Palpatine's return. What were we talking about?
We're talking about how they just said,
do it. Do it.
Yes. Go on. Sorry.
So, yeah, it wasn't supposed to happen. There's a now legendary quote of Ian McDiarmid. He kind of pressed George on whether or not there was a possibility for a return. And every time he would ask him 1,000 different what if questions, like, what if this happened? What if this happened? George just shut him down. He's like, no, he doesn't come back. And I think that really says more than anything else.
That's interesting because I don't think I remember like learning that.
Yeah. Let me see. Let me see if I can find that quote a second. Give me just one moment.
Okay. Well, while he's doing that, I'm just going to do this. I have too much fun with that. I'm going to put more clips on here. I'm going to have so much fun. So, I guess I'll continue on from where you were going with that. So, actually, I don't even remember where
I found the thing. If you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. Hold on. Pulling up the article. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an IndieWire article. And the headline is Ian McDiarmid says George Lucas wouldn't have brought Palpatine back from the dead. And so it's basically going on about after they wrapped up filming for Return of the Jedi.
Oh, I remember now.
Yeah.
I remember it now.
He says that he thought he was dead, and he couldn't believe it when George said that they were killing him. He was like, "Oh, are you serious? I mean, you think about it. Like, we get all this build up for Palpatine. This is the first movie that he's actually in a physical sense, not being like a hologram or anything." So it says, "Oh, does he come back?" And George says, "Nah, he's dead." So I just accepted it. But, of course I didn't want him to be dead. But yeah, he was basically, he was saying he was just he wasn't trying to put Disney down or anything with that quote. It wasn't like that, but he was just kind of saying he was very surprised to get the call. But I kind of take it as it's just another way that Disney has kind of disrespected George's vision.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Because it's not what he intended to happen. I mean,
as Kronos says, George does not like to bring back dead characters.
I think it's kind of cheap, I think it's kind of a cheap move, because what you're saying is like, okay, like looking back at it with hindsight being 2020, seeing that they like brought Palpatine back in at the end, JJ says, "Oh, it's perfect. He's the main villain. Of course you have to have him in the final act." Like, I kind of get that, but at the same time, it seems like it was just like, okay, we've killed off everyone that everyone cares about, and nobody likes any of these new characters, so we got to bring somebody else back. That's just kind of how it felt for me.
Yeah. And I think that's why it doesn't really work, because it was just a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah, it seemed like there's no, and maybe there are some more subtle hints that I've just not really noticed. It just seems very jarring. It doesn't seem like
the only subtle hint that I could name.
Snoke's ring? Is that what you're gonna say? Snoke's ring?
No, but that's a. If I cared more about the sequel trilogy, that would be a very interesting topic.
It's kind of. I don't really like the sequel trilogy that much, but it is kind of an interesting topic.
That I will say maybe we'll go over that one because that one actually did intrigue me when I've seen that. It's like supposed to be like, what is it? Part of Vader's castle? No, what something from Mustafar, right?
Yeah, no, you're on it. I'm not exactly sure. I
It's
don't
got
exactly
something to do
remember,
with
but it's
Vader's
something from Vader's
castle
castle.
and something about being strong with the Force or something like that. I don't know. I'm going to read up on it, but I ain't read up on that in a long time.
It's been a minute for me as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up. That might be a future topic. We can talk about Snoke's ring and why they didn't do anything with it. Goodness.
Yeah, it's just another underdeveloped idea on Disney's part.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we sort of covered a lot, albeit probably poorly on my part, but we sort of covered everything that we wanted to cover. And I'd just like to sort of talk about like the plans for the future because I just got my Elgato. So the gaming stuff might actually be coming pretty soon.
Sweet.
Yes. So I'm going to have to figure out how that stuff works. I literally just got it today. So I'm super excited. And I'm also I'm going to be buying a monitor too soon. I'm going to try to set up my room in here so I can do more stuff. Maybe I can even show my face at some point. I've thought about it. Not
His
so
face
sure if
is
I'm going
so
to
cute, people. You're going to love it.
maybe a face reveal or something. I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Face reveal at 100K subs.
Okay, we'll do that. 100K.
That's reasonable.
Reasonable-ish. I don't know right now. I've only got, I think, 25.
Yeah, it was 25 the last time I checked. But hey, for the amount of content that we've been putting out, I think it's pretty reasonable, and it's only going to grow from here. So I'm very optimistic.
I think, yes, I agree. It's because I've got so many ideas going forward. And part of the reason why I moved the Tuesday stream to Mondays because one of my buddies that I know that I work with, who's a Star Wars fan, he has some different views on Star Wars. So I'm actually working on a new stream series called From a Certain Point of View. I've already talked to Psycho about it, so I'm super excited to put this one out, but I've just got to make sure I get everything right with it. I don't want to just put it out and have to rework it 100 times. So I've got some ideas for future streams, but the basis of that one is that one person is going to talk about a topic, and whether it's controversial or not, or whether you agree with it or not, you either have to defend or attack it. So, and it's easier if you have people that are on two different sides. And he's not like, he agrees with me on a lot of things, but there is some things that he disagrees with. So I'm going to try to find some of the things that we disagree on. And I'm going to sort of put that out there and see what comes of that. So, I mean, it's always good to hear both sides of the story, which is what I'm going for with that one. But it's also here to show that we accept it, that you can like the sequel trilogy, or you can have a different opinion about Star Wars than I do, and we can still get along with it. So that's really the whole point of this channel, is to create a non-toxic community, which starts with people that have differing opinions getting along. And for some reason, it doesn't seem like that's a possible thing anymore, but that's something I want to prove different. So that's the whole point of From a Certain Point of View. That will maybe, hopefully, come out soon.
Dr. Drew says he tells people to be a part of the rational revolution, which means all this craziness that's going on in the world, second guess it, ask questions, be a compassionate person, be a rational person, have conversations with people, and most of all, be respectful, because we can all enjoy different things and believe different things and still have a vested love for one another and still come together and just share love for this amazing franchise.
And maybe even try to bring it back from the brink of death. Let's just all become Plagueises of the fandom and try to influence the Midi-chlorians of this franchise to create life in it once again.
Listen, the fandom Plagueis is the opposite of the Phantom Menace.
Exactly. Yeah, we're I don't exactly consider myself part of the Phantom Menace, though I don't like disagree with everything they say. But I don't always agree with everything they
It's
say.
kind of, in my opinion, the Phantom Menace is kind of a toxic way. It's kind of toxic in its own, sort of. Like, not necessarily everyone that considers themselves to be a part of it. I just feel like I've kind of had conversations with some of those people sometimes that are like a little
Yeah.
aggressive or something. I don't know.
Look, there's
I
gonna
just
be those types of people in every type of fandom.
absolutely, and that's
It's not even
the thing you
exclusive.
have to remember is that just because you have a bad experience with somebody or you experience someone in the fandom that has a toxic or a racist or a sexist belief or something,
That doesn't
and
represent them
they
all.
don't like the sequel trilogy, that isn't reflective that everyone that doesn't like the sequel trilogy is sexist.
That's a problem with today's fandom of Star Wars. Like the Disney side fandom, basically is like, well, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. They're basically the Anakin, the dark side Anakin of the fandom, and as we all know, only Sith deal in absolutes.
And it kind of comes back to the concept of credos and dogmas in the world, and who you fall in being, like who you fall in being one of those. You know, if you think about those people that we're talking about, they're in a sense just brainwashed and they're hating on their own. You know, they're just, it's like the Star Wars fan base destroying itself from the inside. Like, we just need to come together and respect one another and love one another and just be like, you know, it doesn't matter if you like The Last Jedi and I don't like The Last Jedi, or if I like, you know, the prequel trilogy and you don't. Like, that's perfectly fine. Then let's talk about the original trilogy. You know, let's find our common ground, because y'all know what happens when you try the high ground. It doesn't end up well. You lose your limbs. That's what happens.
Yes. Don't try to mess with the high ground. That's a lesson that we should take away from all this, because the high ground
the key takeaway from the stream is don't mess with the high ground. We didn't even talk about Obi-Wan. That's how prominent this message is. Even when Obi-Wan doesn't come up, the high ground comes up. What does that tell you, people?
It just tells us that the high ground's always
hello there,
showing up everywhere, you know.
hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
So good.
I know, I love it. Good. But yeah, I've got plenty of plans for the future of this channel, and I'm hoping that everybody here and everybody that watches will join us on that on that journey, because me and Psycho have got a lot of things that we're going to be doing for this channel. And it's not all going to be Star Wars related. Most of it will be, but I do want to talk about a couple other things as well. So I'm saying this early on so nobody thinks that this channel is just Star Wars, but Star Wars is the main focus of this channel. So if I want to play, let's say, Destiny 2 for a game stream or something like that, I'll play it. If I want to play Star Wars Battlefront, I'm going to play it. You know, I want to do what I want to do. And, of course, it's not just me. So Psycho has his input as well. But we got plans, and we're going to do whatever we feel makes us, like, what we enjoy doing. That's what I'm trying to say. Because if this will end up feeling more like a job than it is fun if we don't do what we want to do. And that's what I want to avoid, because I've already got me a job and I'm not a fan of it.
Me too, friend.
So I'd rather this be more of a fun hobby than a job.
Which, speaking of which, for my work, I'm going to be streaming on May the 4th on the Troll and Toad YouTube channel and Twitch channel. So plan on tuning in for that. I'm probably gonna plug that every stream we do from here until then.
Yes, I'm super excited about that. I couldn't believe that when you told me.
Me either. I like when we've talked about doing this for a while, but I didn't really think that I would be able to do it so soon.
It's a surprise, to be sure. But a
welcome one.
Yes. And you know what? It's ironic. If you get what I mean. Like, we're doing a Star Wars podcast currently, and they are letting you join them on their Star Wars podcast. So I feel like in a way it's sort of ironic, but also like you're destined for this. So.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, there might be some of them watching right now. If there's any troll peeps watching, what's up? I plugged the stream in the company Discord, so maybe we snagged a few of them.
Maybe at some point.
Maybe.
Either way, I'm excited for the future of this, and I hope that everybody here joins me and Psycho for this wonderful journey that we began. Also, be sure to tune in Thursday at 6 o'clock for Star Wars Topic Stream. That one's got some pretty interesting topics that I'd like to talk about. I would love to talk about them right now, but I'm going to save them because I've got a couple special guests over on that one. Sir AOA, and then the buddy that I keep talking about. I don't know what he's going to call himself on here, so I'm not going to say his name unless he wants me to say his name. I'm going to keep that confidential for now.
Confidential information.
Yeah,
tune in for the stream to find out.
Yes, exactly. So, he's like I said, he's got some different views, but he overall, in a way, agrees with a lot of what I have to say. And me and him sort of talked about force healing today. He said that he liked how they did it in The Mandalorian, but he does not like how they did it in the movie. So, we can agree on some things, that's for sure. But he's going to be showing up on Thursday, which is going to be awesome. Sir AOA, me, Psycho, and Commander Tano. We're all going to be on the Thursday stream, so I'm super excited about that one. We're sort of doing like a experiment right now. We're not allowing ourselves to have more than 5 people, and if 5 people proves to be too many on one stream, then we'll move it down to 4. So we're just sort of messing with things right now. We'll get a good format and hopefully be able to produce better streams in the future, because I feel like today was one of my most unorganized, even though I prepared for it. But, I'm trying out new things, and I'm also going to be bringing a bunch of new content to this channel, maybe even some recorded videos. So be prepared for that. Though I will say, I'm not so sure how I'm going to do recorded videos because it takes hours for it to upload for me on here. Like, it took all day to upload a 20-minute video, or re-upload, let me put it that way, because the stream wouldn't process for some reason. It was that short one that we did on Saturday. So for some reason it wouldn't process, and I had to re-upload it. I don't know why I did that, but I had to re-upload it, and it took hours to get that thing re-uploaded, which I'm new to YouTube, so maybe that's a regular thing for a lot of people, but then again, it could just be our terrible internet. I don't know. But either way, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. It has been wonderful talking about Palpatine, and maybe we can talk about him a little bit more at some point, maybe get a better explanation to a lot of the things that we got. Maybe we'll get some more information, anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and end this. Do you have any closing thoughts, Psycho?
Respect one another, respect yourselves, and take care of yourselves.
Yes, may the Force be with you. Always.
Always.
Take on 3 plans, 2 marches, 3.5.